All right, we're recording. So I'll find Caroline. So Sarah, Mel, B, if you can introduce yourself. I'll start with Sarah, if you can introduce yourself. And then yeah, I'll find Caroline. So, and then Mel, if you can go after that, and then B after that.
Hi everyone, I'm Sara. I'm the co-founder of Happity. We're a platform for helping people to find and book baby and toddler activities. It's really lovely to be here today, and actually it's amazing to be able to see all your faces, because I can see there's a lot of people here that I know are registered with Happity that I've had conversations via email and chat before. So it's really nice to see you all, and I'm really looking forward to this webinar today.
Hey everybody, my name is Mel and I'm the co-founder of Bilinguasing, which is a language musical class for young children. So we teach French, Spanish, German and Italian to children ages 0 to 11 years old. And looking forward to having a chat to everybody and hearing your thoughts.
And I'm B. I'm one of the two co-owners, franchisors of Baby College. Donna Twyford is the other one, she's not here. And yeah, we run the parents and baby development classes for 0 to 4-year-olds, all online at the moment, but hopefully opening soon in September. Lovely to see everybody.
Alrighty, great. Thank you guys. So yeah, let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is guidelines. Not that we're not completely fed up with these guidelines that have been released over the past few months, but there is a new release out yesterday, which I'm going to put a link to real soon, and that's what we kind of were kicking about before we actually came onto this call, was how we're interpreting these new guidelines. So generally speaking, they're pretty positive. If you haven't read them just yet, I will put a link up and you guys can get a chance to digest it either now or afterwards. But guidelines, guys. So if we start with B, just because you finished just then, how are Baby College looking at these new guidelines, or the ones you've previously did? How are you guys planning for, like, September, October, beyond, and what sort of stuff are you thinking you need to put in place, and what's your take on it in general?
So as everybody here knows, the guidelines seem to be changing almost daily, including today. So I know that different guidelines affect different franchises in different ways. For us, we're putting quite good guidelines in place, so that just really to give parents confidence. So it's all really about class sizes, about whether you can sing, about social distancing, about hand gel, hand washing, cleansing, cleaning, and it's really just making sure that all of the different sort of elements are in place, so that you are trying your best to make sure that you adhere to all of the different guidelines, but you have to pick out the ones that apply to your particular class and your particular environment where you run, whether it's outside, inside, class sizes. So it's been a really quite a complicated and ongoing job to make sure that we adhere to the guidelines, to give our franchisees confidence, to give our customers confidence, and to be able to open, but thinking to the longer term. So not just opening now and all the brave people come and everyone else thinks you're terrible, but opening so that you can rebuild slowly your business with confidence. That's my take.
Okay, great. Mel, how about you?
So very similar to B, we tend to run classes in community centre venues, so whether they're attached to a church hall, and there's quite a lot of conflicting information because you've got the guidelines for churches and places of worship, you've got the guidelines for community venues, and then of course you've got the guidelines for out of school clubs and things like that, and they kind of do conflict each other a little bit. So we're sticking to numbers from September for groups of 7, so 7 families only. So we're limiting our numbers. We normally have 15, but it's now just going to be 7 families, 2 meters apart. So we're really thinking about our class layout, making sure that everybody has that distance, one-way systems in place, longer time between sessions so that you can clean, safely get the people out and people back in. And of course, there's this massive issue to do with face coverings, because again, that's a conflicting thing, that in community venues, indoor spaces, face coverings are now, of course, mandatory. Whereas if you have young children, there's clauses written saying that if you need to communicate and somebody cannot perhaps hear you and you need to use your lips sign language, then you don't necessarily need to wear one. So at the moment we're saying face coverings are needed, but we're just trying to get some clarification really, because it's difficult, because in restaurants and cafes, you don't have to wear one if you're eating there. So that's a bit conflicting, really. So we're just trying to work out that, really. Singing is a massive part of our class, and I'm sure many of you on here, again, singing is something that you do regularly. So at the moment, we're trying to use microphones, visors, talking through it rather than belting things out, turning things up on speakers to try and get around that, ventilating the room, and making sure the class teacher is at least 3 meters away from everybody so they can do that safely. And again, it is just the extra cleaning that's going to be involved, and making sure that our class providers have had the necessary training. So I know there's some providers out there are offering online training courses where you can have an infectious disease training, just to make sure we understand how to do it safely.
Okay, great. And Sarah, what's your take on it and your clients?
Yeah, so as many of you might know, we started a petition to the government along with B to try and get clearer guidelines specifically for the under 5 sector, because, you know, you've got guidelines saying things like 6 households can meet up outside, 6 people, but then you're counting a mother and baby as 2 people. So 6 adults can meet, but only 3 mums and babies could meet in a park, for example. So it's quite clear that a lot of the guidelines are maybe unduly restrictive when you apply them to under 5s, the under 5s market, when you compare what's happening, what adults are allowed to do versus, you know, if you're counting a babe in arms the same as an adult, that doesn't necessarily translate, but that's the world that we're having to operate in. We have to adhere to the guidelines. I run a Facebook group for the Hapity community, and, you know, as you can imagine, all of the conversation has been about guidelines, excuse me, and how to operate COVID safely for the past say month or so. We've collected up maybe, I don't know, I think we're maybe up to 15 different guidelines now that could potentially apply to people in our sector. So it is incredibly confusing, but what I think is really important when you're looking at these guidelines, you know, they are deliberately vague because you are the person who knows your business best. You're the person who can work out what is and isn't feasible, and it's a bit up to us to try to adhere to those guidelines and the spirit of those guidelines, but in a way that enables our business to operate and to be able to deliver a good service. And if you look, you know, what I've been really conscious of is going back to the source material, because there are a lot of conversations happening in various Facebook groups and people to people, and a lot of misinformation going around as well. It's, you know, it's very easy to see someone saying, oh, we're not allowed to run, and then thinking, okay, that means I'm not allowed to run. But actually, if you look at the guidelines and you apply that to what you're doing, because there's such a massive diversity in the under 5 sector, that everyone's running different sorts of classes, there are ways to apply those guidelines that mean that you can run safely. And in the example of the face coverings new guidelines that came out of the weekend, I've been looking through those. Actually, there are a number of instances where you're not required to wear a face mask. And also what's really important is to read where it's applying to public spaces where people are coming into uncontrolled contact, if you like. So when you're moving around a supermarket, clearly, you know, your face mask is kind of a last resort to protect people in that instance where they're not able to maintain social distancing. And what we've actually been hearing this week from people who've been going through risk assessments and talking to local health and environmental health, actually, if you're in a private venue and you're putting in place all of these different measures, you know, social distancing and those kinds of, you know, where you're wearing a visor, where you're keeping the 2-meter distance, actually that is far more important than the face coverings part of it. So actually you can imagine a situation where actually once you've got people into the venue, yes, they might have worn their face masks into the venue, but once they're in position, if you're, say for example, if you're in a baby massage class, you're not expecting those parents to be moving around once they're in the class. And in that instance where they're mainly interacting with their own child and they're static, you know, that is an instance where you could discuss with, you know, relevant with the venue and so on, you know, you could potentially have a plan to allow parents to remove their face mask in that situation. So I think, you know, there's a lot of interpretation that needs to go into the guidelines. there's a lot of careful thinking that needs to go into it to make sure that you are operating safely. But I think at the same time, it's really important not to maybe over-interpret the guidelines and sort of assume that some of these things that are being said are the letter, you know, that it means nobody can run. I think there are ways, I mean, and you sort of have to understand what the intention is behind the guideline and then see how that applies to your personal business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I'm going to jump in a second, but I think Caroline is here. Caroline, can you hear us and can you talk?
I can hear you and I can see you, but for some reason my camera doesn't want you to see me.
So. I'll try and figure that out. But Caroline, okay. All you missed from the earlier bit was that I want to apologise to everyone else that was late for this call. It was my fault, not yours. Yeah, all we've missed basically is basically how you're interpreting the new guidelines that were released yesterday and what your general thoughts are in terms of restarting face-to-face classes. Obviously, a big part of Joe Jingles. Actually, introduce yourself as well,
sure.
General Manager of Joe Jingles. But yeah,
okay.
what your general thoughts are.
I'm sorry if you can't see me, although for some of you that might be better. But yeah, I'm General Manager at Joe Jingles. I've worked for the business since 2001. So yeah, lots of experience with music and singing and with franchising in general, and been through lots of different experiences with the business. And certainly in the last few months, yeah, this is for all of us, it's been the weirdest experience ever. The way that we've addressed it now, we've developed our own guidelines based very much around what we've read and seen from the government already. Generally, we've tended to take it to an extreme so that we've given our franchisees a sort of worst case scenario. This is everything you will need to consider. And I'm sure every other activity group is doing the same, or certainly something very similar. I think for some of them, yes, it can seem overwhelming. It's a lot to consider. It's extra expense. If you think about the head shields, face masks, any cleaning equipment that's needed for classes, it's all those extra considerations that have to be taken into account. And that's before you've even started thinking about how you're going to restart the classes. Each of our franchisees has now been advised to liaise with their local environmental health. So I'm sure at some point our head office will be contacted by somebody to say, please can you leave us alone for a while? But I think it's the best route that we can advise them to take. That they basically let as many people know as possible what they're doing, how they're planning to get back to classes safely. I think it will be a gradual return to classes in September. I don't anticipate every area opening, but I think some will be able to do it very, very successfully. And I think once we've provided the reassurances and we've proven that we can deliver safe sessions, then I think hopefully it will encourage more people to open, and it will certainly encourage more parents to come to classes. I think the guidelines that came out yesterday, yeah, it certainly provides more positivity for us and gives us more reassurances of what we can do. I think our biggest issue at the moment is still about singing, whether we can actually sing at classes. But again, I think if they're now saying that indoor performances are allowed, then I really can't see why a children's music group, if you keep the numbers reduced, if you have social distancing measures in place, I really cannot understand why that would be a major issue. But I think all we can do is try and do it safely, do it as well as possible, and take it from there.
Yeah, I think so. On that last point as well, I think there was also another update about performing arts, which includes singing, which I'll probably link to in just a second in the chat function. So another set of guidelines to give you guys. I guess obviously they're inextricably linked to the ones I've just linked to, and you guys can read from yesterday. But I mean, I think one of these things is that there's been, I mean, sort of touched upon it, Mel touched upon it as well with some of your franchisees before we actually came live. And that was a bit of animosity between people in areas and sort of confusion, I think, from hearsay, from one provider saying we're doing 30 children, we're back to normal. And there's been a lot of this, we're back to normal classes, that sort of stuff. And people worried about doing the same or giving off the wrong impression. Guess what are your thoughts on brand from this point of view? And I'm always big on brand and making decisions which are good for you guys long term as a business owner, rather than just the short term, get the revenue flowing in, which obviously is critical, especially when there's been months where you guys have had limited income, or maybe you haven't if your online classes have been going so well, but there's a rush to kind of get back to normal, I suppose. What would your advice be on kind of just slowly getting yourself back in to make sure you don't fall into pitfalls of making quick decisions that might look bad. Because Sarah mentioned this about a restaurant example as well, and how there's it's been a move to kind of get as many covers and many tables covered. Obviously, that's a separate sector. I won't talk about that too much.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that in general? Anyone in the panel can talk.
Okay. Certainly from our perspective, I see the future very much about focus on quality, not quantity. I think more than ever, we need to be delivering a high quality product that really stands out, and we're really consistent in what we provide, and that we're providing value for money and an excellent experience for all participants. So I think as a franchise network, yes, we're a large franchise network, and it will be difficult for some of them to do it. But I think our focus has to be on the value of our brand and what we stand for. And I think now that we're doing more activity online, that gives us wider exposure and much larger audience. So in many ways, it becomes even more important. Which brands will stand out? What do they stand for? And what value do they offer to the customer? And I think it's really important that we consistently deliver everything to a consistent standard across our brand. So yeah, this now more than ever, I think, is a real challenge for us. But I think if we're very clear with all of our franchisees about what we expect them and class teachers to provide, then hopefully, you know, the majority will be able to do it. But I think it will be a gradual process, and I think ongoing, it has to be very much focused on quality of what we're actually doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, clearly coronavirus is not going to be going anywhere for quite a while. We're going to be operating in this kind of environment for some time. And, you know, yes, in the short term, there's clearly a lot of parents that are desperate to get back to classes. So people who are starting their classes now, you know, they're able to find those customers and fill those classes quite, you know, fairly easily. But if they are not operating in a way that allows people to feel safe and secure, then, you know, those customers potentially are not going to be coming back. They're not going to be recommending your classes. And particularly with new mums, they're so well connected to one another that if you are running in a way that people don't feel safe, then you can be sure that people in your area are going to hear about that. So, you know, I do think it's important to make sure that you do run in a way that is going to see you through in the long term. And equally, you know, the sooner you get back, then clearly, you know, people will know that you're running and will be talking about you. But it's a delicate balance. You've got to try and get that right.
Yeah. If you haven't,
sorry. I was going to say, I think there's been a shift in realization that the classes are not just for babies and children and entertainment and, you know, an activity, that they're really vital for supporting new parents and for parental mental health and for their social social experiences. And I think people, having been locked down, really are going to value classes where they get to know each other and they feel supported, and they, you know, it's a really good positive boost to their health and well-being.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you haven't surveyed your parents yet, whether they attend a class now or in the past or have never been before, people in your local area, it's really important that you do put across some parent experiences, really, because what do they want to see in your class? This is something that we did quite early on, and people do expect to see smaller class numbers. They do expect to see perhaps PPE being used, hand wash stations, one-way systems, shoes off, no eating and drinking, all these things that we're thinking about. A lot of our guidelines has been pulled in from parents, and it means that they feel valued. It means they feel that their thoughts, their opinions have been taken into consideration. So I think if you haven't done that, whether you're part of a wider franchise or just a one-man band, you're just on your own, an independent provider, it's really important that you do that, and at least then people do think that you're taking it seriously. But going back to what Andy said about brand, your brand is really important, and you don't want to damage that. Sarah was saying, Caroline was saying as well, that parents talk. local parents. There's lots of Facebook groups, things on social media that you may be a part of anyway as a parent, and you'll see them writing, slating the restaurants that they went to where they didn't feel safe, and that's going to start coming out with children's activities as well. They're going to talk about the activities that they've gone back to where they don't feel that social distancing has been taken seriously, where they feel that the class has been packed to the rafters, where they feel that the facilities there, the washing, the cleanliness just wasn't quite up to scratch. And this is going to put people off. So I do sort of see that in September, because we are going to be limiting our class numbers, at Bilinguasing we're just doing 7 when we normally have 15. So we are hoping that we will pack out that class, if you like, with 7 people. But what we do want, when things do go back to normal, whenever that may be, we do want to get full classes again. We don't want those people thinking, it didn't feel safe, they didn't take it seriously, it's made me doubt whether I want to continue with this activity in the future for those reasons. And it can take a long time to recover from a bad review, and many of us, of course, are self-employed, local businesses, and that can be quite damaging as well, not just to yourself if you're an individual, but if you are part of a wider franchise, it can be damaging again to other providers around the country.
You know, I had really great points to add here, and you just covered them all of you. So thank you for that.
Can I add one more little point actually as well?
Yeah, of course.
Again, this shift in people's expectation. I think we're going to be going into a recession, and people are going to be much less sort of kind to see people being really competitive and commercial, and I just think our whole brand needs to be a bit more sort of caring and there for you and helping, not, you know, I'm here to make lots of money out of you. I
completely endorse that point, B. I think, yes, it's probably something we're going to come on to later on, but I think there will be an increase in businesses with set up under social responsibility. So they will be doing more. The focus won't necessarily be quite so much on how much money can we make from this business. It's more about what do we provide to our community and to children in general. And I think most people that enter this sector, I mean, we always say to our franchisees, you know, you are not going to be a millionaire running this type of business. You have to do it because you have a passion for it. And having a passion for an activity does not necessarily translate into making thousands of pounds. So generally, I don't see that as being a major issue for the children's activities sector. But I do think it's a key point going forward that there will be a bigger consideration given to social responsibility and what we can provide to the community.
Also collaboration as well is nice. I mean, it's lovely, this is great. And things like perhaps ICAP, where we're seen to be trying to come up with sensible guidelines together as a group, rather than just all doing individual things and doing your own thing because it's a, you know, rat race. I think just this sort of conversation and collaboration is really important. Yeah,
definitely, I agree. I mean, I'm obviously going to agree with that, but I think, you know, I think the more communication we can have as a sector, I think we're very fragmented, really, you know, much like some other sectors, we're very fragmented, I think. And I think when you have more conversations and you kick ideas and solutions around, and you challenge your own assumptions too. Because I think sometimes you fall into a trap as a business, especially if you're a sole provider, not part of a bigger network. If you're an independent operator, you know, who just operates locally, you can fall into a trap of thinking that what your opinion is as a parent or as a business owner is what everyone around you thinks. And actually, Mel touched upon doing a survey, and I think that's really, really good. If you haven't done that, I would definitely agree with that. And I think it's about figuring out what does your customer base want here. Because actually, what you think, if you're a bit more relaxed about the rules, that's absolutely fine. There's no judgment there. But other people in your network, your customers, most importantly, may not be so relaxed. They may be expecting to see something from you that you haven't thought of. So definitely get that information. And I think the more, like B just said as well, the more collaboration and talking with people, you know, whether it's in ICAP, whether it's in a forum on Facebook or whatever, just to get people's ideas. Obviously, be mindful that the more ideas that come and the more information that gets put about, sometimes borders on opinions and trolling maybe, but at the same time, I think, you know, generally speaking, our sector is a really friendly bunch, and I think the more collaboration and talking have are important. That moves me on. I'm going to touch upon any questions in a second, guys, so feel free to ask questions if you're watching and you want to ask them.
Andy, sorry, I was just to add to that, so one of the things that we're doing is and obviously it's going to take a bit of time as more classes come back, but one of the things that we're doing is trying to put together case studies, so sort of showing what are the great class providers that are operating safely, what are the measures you can expect to see, because one of the things that we're finding is that parents are incredibly confused, and so one of the things I think we can helpfully do is show parents you know, these are the ways that class providers are running and that can make you feel safe, especially where there are a lot of new parents who might be feeling quite nervous about coming to class. So those sorts of things I think can really help to bring those standards up across the whole network of class providers, help us all to work together, help us with, you know, all of us individually trying to interpret these very confusing guidelines, but also then communicating that back to parents as well. So that's something that we're working on.
Yeah, that sounds great. I want to move on now because obviously we're whizzing through. It's good chat so far. Online versus in-person classes, and we sort of touched upon this in the report that was sent out on Wednesday. Obviously, there's and business models in general as well. What are your thoughts on? Obviously, I'm guessing that all of you guys, in some shape or form, have done online classes in the past few months. Maybe not all the franchisees you look after have, but I'm sure that you've done some stuff. And I know, Sarah, obviously, you know a lot that have been doing that. You've helped a lot that have been doing that. What are your thoughts on the kind of immediate to kind of slightly longer term future, let's say next 12 months or so, in terms of online versus in-person? You know, we've spoken about going back to those in-person, face-to-face classes relatively soon, assuming everything goes well. But what's your thoughts on online versus in-person? Because that might potentially have a big shift in our sector in terms of how operators work. And I've spoken to a few actually who have decided they're actually going to drastically change their business model longer term now, and probably go and focus more online and that's something. And I also said to people that I wouldn't be surprised if we do start seeing more startups over the next few months, but certainly next few years, who have an online only model. Obviously that brings a different challenge, it's a very different type of model. But what are your thoughts on online versus in-person classes, how you guys might transition, and if they play a part longer term for you, without giving away anything too sensitive to your business, of course? Shall
I start on that, Andy?
Okay.
Yeah, so for those of you who've read the report, so I was writing about the online sector because I do think that there is an underlying unmet need in the online sector, where there are parents in more rural locations that maybe didn't have as much access to classes previously. And so I do think that there is a role for online provision to play in the long term, not just in the immediate future. I think clearly, you know, everyone is desperate to get back to in-person classes at the moment, so that's what parents are going to be looking for. But there is certainly going to be periods of time where I'm calling it sort of COVID-induced demand for online classes, where you might be having some local lockdowns, you might be having people that are needing to shield. So there clearly is an opportunity for online. I think the main issue we've got is that there are a lot of class providers that are wanting to offer online classes. There's a lot of advantages to operating online. There's lower costs, you don't have to hire a venue and so on. So I think the main challenge at the moment is what the balance between supply and demand is changing so rapidly over the next few months, that keeping, you know, operating in that environment is obviously very difficult for everybody. But overall, I think that there is this scope for an online service. It just might be that it takes quite a different format from what we've been seeing over the lockdown period, where we thought, you know, hopefully we were hoping it was going to be a matter of weeks, maybe a couple of months, but clearly it's going to be taking quite a lot longer.
I think with us, the success of online classes, and I'm sure lots of you can agree, does depend on the product that you have and the sort of class that you have, because there are some classes that have transferred really well into the online market. So look at, you know, Joe doing his fitness classes, languages as well for us. That's why I'm dressed like this. I'm about to do a class after this session. So some sessions have actually done really well from it, and others, you know, if you're a swim class provider, if you do messy play, of course you've found it quite difficult to transfer your product and what you sell, your service, into the online market. One thing that we have advised all of our teachers to do is to try and keep that online model alongside. There does need to be a transition period, and that is definitely something that came out of our survey, that parents, some of them are not ready to return to class, some of them are shielding, Some of them are saying, well, I'm going back full time anyway in September, so I couldn't have come to face to face. I would love to have this. We've got loads of parents who found us from other countries around the world, other places where we don't have classes running. So it does seem that, you know, we can have an online model running alongside. And we've also got to look into the future. We don't know what's going to happen. Are we going to go into another lockdown? Are we going to have parents who then decide to go abroad and have to isolate for 2 weeks and can't attend class and are expecting to have something in its place to replace their missed sessions? Are we going to have parents who have to go into self-isolation because they're unwell? Or are we going to have those local lockdowns that many of you in certain areas of the country are facing? So I've said to a lot of our teachers that we do need to have these two models alongside, because we can no longer offer parents catch-up classes. You've got to stay within your class, numbers are limited. So because we're changing the way that we work with regards to drop-ins, with regards to free taster classes as well, we're not able to have that free taster class, a random person just come in for one session. You know, the online model is really beneficial for that. And I do feel that there is a future for online classes, and that kind of goes into the way our businesses are going to be running in the future. You know, do we offer free taster classes to parents? We've all been there when you have that free drop in and they come and you never see them again, and then another person comes the next week and you don't see them again, and it's quite soul destroying. And it's about changing our relationship in some ways with the client as well, that they see that you are selling a very valuable product and you're allowing them to have that free demo, if you like, in an online format. And if you like it, come to the face-to-face classes, but you do perhaps need to block book for that. So a lot of our franchisees, we are doing away with the pay-as-you-go model because we can't allow that anymore. It has to be block booking. And it's sort of changing the way that they run things. And now that parents expect it, it's been very easy to phase those things out, those little bad business habits and those little trenches that we've dug for ourselves, where we offer pay as you go, where we offer so many free sessions. It's perhaps allowing us to sort of press pause and rethink about how you want to run your business in the future.
Yeah,
can I add as well? Sorry, I was going to say, if we've learned anything because through lockdown, it's that you have to be flexible. So obviously we had to be incredibly flexible in March and go online completely, and we discovered, you know, a lot of you probably discovered a new market or a different way of doing things that you wouldn't have necessarily done spontaneously anyway. So now that that's up and running and possibly successful, you know, you want to be able to use that to maintain that flexibility if you need it, just like Mel was saying, really. So yeah, from Baby College's point of view, we're certainly going to be keeping our online classes going, because we know there's a demand, because we talk to our customers and we know that there's a demand for it to run alongside, and possibly in longer term in the future as well. But I think it's just being a little bit light on your feet and being flexible is really important at the moment, because things change all the time.
I think it's a natural evolution of the market. You know, if you look at retail, retail's gone online. We're just going through the same process. And I think very much with Joe Jingles' business, it's how we differentiate what we offer online compared with what we offer in face-to-face classes. And I think that's what will be key going forward, that there's no point just offering the same product. You've got to offer something different, something extra, to give the customer a reason for either viewing you online or coming to a face-to-face class. So I think everything that's happening, it in a way, it's just been speeded up because of COVID, that we're having to address a different market, that customers want to see us in a different way. So it's a natural evolution almost for our business, that online and offline will have to work together. And it might take many different forms going forward. And I think the point that Andy made earlier, that there will be new entrants into the marketplace who will solely deliver online. You know, there's already businesses doing it. We'd already, within our business, we'd started considering online activity. Could we develop something along the lines of an online TV programme? We developed a series of cartoon animations last year that we hadn't planned to launch, but because of the situation over the last few months, we've launched them earlier than originally planned. And that was just with the way of making tentative steps into how could we develop our business online. And I only see that growing going forward. I don't think we have any option now, but it's how we do it so that it still complements what we do at face-to-face classes, but we also add value with another package online.
Yeah, I suppose from my point of view, and I totally agree with Caroline just there. I think you have to start looking. We're going to touch upon consumer behaviour a little bit in a second, but I think you have to start thinking about 2 points really for me: is customer centricity, and also generational shifts in buying behaviour, basically. And I think in terms of the customer centricity, I hear a lot of people, across different forums and emails and stuff like that, who say, they haven't liked the online stuff. They can't wait to go back to the face-to-face stuff. That's what they love doing. That's what they got into this for, I suppose. And I totally get that. Like, I'm from an activity professional background as well. I've done it for a long, long time, and I love the face-to-face stuff. And obviously the stuff like social interaction for children and the relationships they build and the rapport and all the things that go into the face-to-face, all the kind of byproducts of your main core program, should we say, are really, really important. But actually, generationally, you guys are probably targeting, probably going to be mums, but let's just say mums and dads between the age of, say, 25 to 45, give or take a few years. Especially the under 5 market, I guess. Now, I think with that is that they have a certain way of doing things. So there's a lot of millennial type generational people in there, right? There's obviously people just before the millennial generation, and there's probably a few people that are from the kind of Generation Z population going into that as well, I suppose. But understand that the Generation Z one, which is going to be the next wave of parents that come through, including my younger sister, for example, who's just having her first baby soon, is that their way of living is all on social media. It's all online. My sister's very rarely away from her phone, for example. And I banter her about that, but that's just the way they behave, and it's norm for their generation. So actually, what are the norms for that generation? It's very, very tech savvy, very, very online native in nature. So actually going to face-to-face classes might actually start, a bit like we used to say how going to face-to-face classes is quite nerve-wracking for some of the introvert parents, for example, and that still is the case. But actually it might then start becoming the case where actually face-to-face classes become a burden or a hassle. And actually COVID-19 and the online switch for a lot of activity providers actually has just shown that actually we can do this. So I think that there needs to be a wider thinking here longer term. I know you guys are probably thinking right now, Andy, this is too much to think about. I need to just get my classes back in. I need to read the new guidelines that have been released yesterday and just get going with stuff. But actually thinking longer term, if you've got plans to be in this sector for next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, which I'm sure lots of you do, is that how is our business model currently set up? Is it future-proof? Because those are really key points. I think they're really key points to think about. And if there's a way you can start transitioning, and maybe COVID-19 has kicked that on a year or two, maybe for some of you, but actually it's probably a good opportunity to start thinking quite clearly about that. Sarah, I think you might have another point to add before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the online sector, it's incredibly complex. It's not a clear situation where you can just pick up what you were doing before and plop it down into an online world and expect that to work long term. I think it did work for a period because we thought it was going to be a transitional temporary lockdown, but the sorts of things that we're looking to support on Happity, we're launching a new subscriptions feature, we're looking at ways to launch new services that will actually enable more people to deliver online as a collective, because clearly when you operate online, people expect to pay less. And really, as a class provider, you need to be able to find ways to scale your audience. So certainly, definitely from our point of view, we're looking at it as there's going to be a long-term need for an online service in the children's activity sector. And what does that look like? Actually, we can be quite imaginative about how this works in an online world, where, as you say, the customers are very tech savvy and they've got very different expectations versus what you would potentially get in a physical class. So I think it's going to be really, really exciting, interesting times ahead. And I think we should see some really good innovation over the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, definitely.
It isn't just price either. They actually, having run Baby College at Home, which we've done collectively, they have huge expectations for variety and choice as well. As soon as you go online, they're not just happy to pay for one class a week. They want to be able to a choice of 4 a day. And then if you suddenly provide 2 a day, they're like, well, that's not enough. And you think, well, you're only paying for 1 a week. So their expectations are really high.
It's funny you mentioned that, Bean. I think that I've mentioned this before in a previous one, but actually that we had to talk about generations, but we're all kind of in the generation of Netflix and that model, right? And we expect to be able to watch a film by clicking 3 buttons maximum. If it doesn't load within the space of 3 seconds, we turn off and change something else. So we're in that instant gratification consumer market, right? We're against everything. And I think that, I suppose one threat we've got, I think there's boundless opportunities from COVID-19 that we all need to try and seek to, explore, I suppose. But one threat I think we've got is that we commoditize what we're doing. And we then just become, the sector just becomes the same. And we've already got that a little bit with, a lot of people who very clearly copy the exact same model and exact same everything of a competitor. And we've all probably been there, but that's happened, unfortunately. And it's always going to happen. That happens, in every single industry, really. Top car companies copy each other. Samsung and Apple are forever suing each other because they're all copying the curvature of their new phone that's coming out, right? It always happens. But, there's an issue then, a threat of online stuff. And I'd love to talk more about that. I want to move on, if that's okay, because we haven't got too much more time. I suppose longer term now, so we're thinking, and again, and you guys haven't got a crystal ball, and everyone's, I'm doing a webinar later this afternoon about 2030 and what the next 10 years holds. I think probably are thinking to themselves, well, I should know the next 10 weeks hold. But if I can ask panelists to think about this longer term, I suppose, what do you kind of see as the kind of key business challenges for activity providers over the next few years? Let's say 3 to 5, maybe longer if you want. And what do you see as not just a way to survive, but to thrive? And we've sort of touched upon it already about how the model might evolve a little bit and generational shifts and consumer behavior may be changing a little bit. But what do you see as your key challenges over the next few years? Have they changed since COVID-19? Maybe they haven't. But if they have, what are they, and what are you thinking at this stage that might need to evolve a little bit, particularly without giving away anything too sensitive?
I think for our business, I mean, we've all said it, obviously online is key, but it's how we address that and how we provide adequate training for existing franchisees to be able to manage that and be happy with what they're doing. But also I think it will change our recruitment process as well. What type of people do we need to help grow our business going forward? It might be a completely different skill set to what we've previously considered. And it may even be that the actual franchise model in itself, when I can't see it existing in the same format. It will be a very, very different business proposition for anybody looking to invest in a franchise, I feel. I think people are going to have to be a lot more tech savvy, but hopefully with the generations that are coming through, that will be a given anyway. It's what they've grown up with. I think there will be masses more creativity, even more so than there is already within the marketplace. I think I've made the point before that I think our sector is going through what retail and many other sectors have already been through, and it's how we adapt to that. What other services can we provide? We need to be as flexible as possible and be able to adapt. But at the same time, we're going to be competing with a much bigger marketplace. It's not just local, it's not just national, this is worldwide now if you're going online. So it's how you address that. And I think that will be the biggest challenge for us going forward. Okay.
I think one of the keys to survival is collaboration. Just things like this, the fact that you're not on your own. There's lots of people out there who are individual class providers, and in the past, perhaps on your local patch, you've almost seen these other class providers as your enemy, as your competition. And I do feel if everybody does work together, and if you do perhaps contact some of your local class providers and talk about collaboration, cross in terms of promotion as well, that you might share Facebook posts on your page and vice versa. I do think that would really help going forward, just to make sure that you're perhaps sticking to the same guidelines, that you are providing the sort of a same level of quality service, that we're not all out there just to kind of outdo each other in terms of like, oh, I'm going to have 15 people and break the guidelines and compete with you. So I do think that having this open, honest discussion with other class providers, working together, whether that's with ICAP or with your local people on your patch as well, that is a key to your survival as well, to try to break down those barriers. And again, the online class model, like Caroline was talking about, it's something that has to exist. It's something that is the future, that we perhaps need to work alongside our model. And I think parents, like what Bea was saying, they are expecting a little bit more now, because we were putting on this lovely all singing, all dancing online class material, which a lot of you have probably absolutely exhausted with it, that you were running stuff back to back all the time, thinking of new ideas, and you were just running on caffeine and adrenaline for the whole of lockdown periods. they are expecting something else from the face-to-face classes. So it's like Caroline said, we need to think about our service. Is there a way that we can diversify and ride out the storm?
So I can add to that as well. I think I think people have realised through lockdown how much they've missed you all. So you're starting at a good point where people are really keen. They know why they come, and educating parents is something that obviously we really care about a lot, and making parents realise why it's important to do all these lovely things with their babies, for themselves, for their babies. And also, going into a recession, we all know people have more babies in recessions, don't they? So we're all perhaps there are fewer of us, we're running smaller classes, there'll be more babies born. I think there are opportunities to provide lots of lovely classes over the next few years to the more babies. But I also think there'll be more people coming and jumping into this market. But I think if you're producing really good quality classes that actually do give something of value to parents, then you have a good chance of riding out the storm.
Yeah,
I think what we shouldn't underestimate is the fact that during lockdown, it's obviously given our customers an opportunity to look at a lot more providers as well. So I think there will be a lot of shift within the marketplace. People may say, well, I've gone to the same class for the last 2 years, but actually during this, I've experienced a different session online, and I'd like to go and see what it's like face to face. So I think customers will shop around more. They can do. If they can see us online, they get a better idea of what's available. So I think that is definitely going to be a challenge for most businesses going forward.
I was just going to say, in terms of customer behaviour, it's something that Mel mentioned earlier. I think it will be important to encourage people to stick with classes and actually get to know. It's one of the things that we've talked about a lot with our the parent users of our site, is that there's a lot of value in a baby having the repetition. There's a lot of value in getting to know the people in your class and sticking with it for a length of time. And this sort of continuous drop in behavior actually is not doing anybody any good. It's not good for the parents, it's not good for the babies, it's not good for the class providers. So I would really like to see, particularly over this next year, I think we will see that shift, encouraging people to stick with those classes for longer. I think that will help businesses to grow as well. And I think that's a really positive for the thing for the industry. I think we'll see online classes being used as a way to sort of showcase what you do. So you'll probably see people trying things out online just to get a bit of a taster, and that will probably be more appropriate than going to a free trial. And then once they know what a brand stands for, what it's about, that's when they may then just convert over to the online classes and get that face-to-face experience. I think what's quite interesting when you speak to new parents, where we've surveyed new parents, is that they do focus very much on what's the benefit to the baby, not yet appreciating how much of baby classes is actually about the parent and what they get from it, and how they get to connect within their local communities. And so and if anybody's interested in getting involved, by the way, with our new subscription service and our online long-term plans, do drop me an email. But one of the things that we're interested in is, how do you replicate some of that value, that the personal connections and the community feeling, in an online world? I think that's been one of the biggest challenges, where we've been running these online Zoom classes and people aren't getting that opportunity to talk to each other and to build those friendships. And I think that is one of the things that we can look at. How do we innovate and sort of, it's not just about delivering the class. There's a lot more value in what we do as class providers that goes above and beyond that. So I think that's going to be really interesting over the next few years.
Going back to collaboration, sorry Andy, just one last point. There is a massive opportunity as well to collaborate in the online world. So me and a few other local class providers, because I do run the head office, but I also run my own local franchise as well and teach there too. So just clubbing together and having like a bit of a one price allows you to access all these different classes. And like B was saying, how exhausting it is running all these all singing, all dancing things, just knowing that the language one is on a Monday, and then the class which is like the sensory or the music element is on a Tuesday, and then the person who's running the sports or fitness is on a Wednesday, and then there's one price and we all kind of split the cost, if you like. And then it means that you're accessing parents that are not necessarily yours. Somebody posted a question on the chat just now saying that my original customers who know me, they love the online content, but what about new people? New people are not necessarily invested in me as a person. They don't know who I am. They don't understand the activity, and they're not necessarily interested. It's been very hard in the online world to kind of grab those new customers and bring them into your classes, even though you may be offering free trials and you can have a day pass in the online community to see what it's all about. So I do think that with collaboration going forward, not only will it save your sanity and having to not only run face-to-face stuff and this online community, having a little bit of a, you know, if you want to have an online pass to this little community that we've created locally and you can get to see a showcase of local activities, it might be a way forward as well to try and reach some of those customers that wouldn't necessarily come across your activity or be interested in your class.
Yeah, you also have the opportunity to offer diversity within your own thing. So, you know, you might not just be doing your classes, you might be doing social sessions alongside, or bedtime stories. I know a lot of people have been doing bedtime stories, we certainly have, or Q&As with experts, or, you know, whatever, just like offering a broader range of you know, offerings.
Yeah, I suppose the last point I'll add really is just coming back to, I can't remember who said it, but in terms of customers being the baby and the parent, I think that's, you know, back in my lifetime, previous life, I've been activity professional, that was always very, very clear to me that actually for me to have great retention rates and high occupancy throughout the year, or throughout whenever we ran the sessions, was you have to schmooze the parents a bit as well, right? And that was my role on the face in terms of actually the sessions, I guess. But in terms of B's last point about value offering, I actually thought that the value offering for a lot of parents that came to my sessions, and it was a sports-based class most of the time, was that actually they built a relationship with me. We talked about X, Y, and Z, different thing, which wasn't related to parenting or childcare or their child, but it was allowing them to build a relationship, which obviously we always talk about is really important with parents and customers, is building a relationship. So for me, the customer was always the most, you know, always really, really important before the session started and afterwards, maybe some camaraderie in between if there was a room for it. And obviously during your actual session, the child has to take focus depending on how you actually run your classes. I guess obviously some class providers there may be a focus on both the parent and child doing things together, I suppose. So remember that both the parent and the child are definitely your customers. So it's not one or the other. Because I think sometimes I had this question, I probably answered it differently before. Who's the customer, right? Is it the child or is it the parent? But actually for me, it's both. And I think if you can address both those pain points for the child who wants to have fun and learn, or the parent who needs to learn as well, maybe, but just wants to build relationships and network and do that sort of stuff, that's important too. So to provide a platform for that online or offline is important. Right, last question before I let you lovely people go. And it's about well-being, and I've been talking about this a lot from the very start. I think the first ever webinar I delivered for a network right at lockdown was actually about well-being, and I'm not a well-being expert, but I certainly understand that to run a successful business regardless of COVID-19 is you need to have, you know, healthy mental and physical state, right? And I think that's probably more important now than ever before in terms of resilience, building that resilience level. And for me, my main advice, before I ask you guys, if you had like a little pointer to finish on, I suppose, in terms of this, what you've advised your franchisees or what you've heard, it's good, or what you've done yourself personally, is that I think step back and breathe is my bit of advice here. I think that sometimes seeing so many guidelines, so many other companies doing this, so many things online, pressure to get online, get offline, build social communities, all the stuff that goes with building a business in 2020 and beyond, can build a lot of pressure. And that's, you know, you knew what you're getting into, or maybe you know now what you're getting into and run your own business, I suppose. So it is what it is. But I think that sometimes for you to be able to, you know, move a few steps forward and move your business forward between now and next year, say, it's important you step back and have some clarity. And I know that some of you have been doing that through holidays or just taking some time out, but I would really, really say to you, if you're feeling burnt out, and I'm sure a lot of you probably are, even subconsciously, do take a step back. Just chill out for a day, 2, 3 days if you can. I know obviously we've got September coming and you've got childcare. I'm sure you guys are parents with young children are probably thinking, Andy, there's no time for stepping back. I totally resonate with that point, having 2 kids myself. But I would say try and take a step back, get a breather, go for a drive, go for a walk on your own maybe, without your partner. That would be my advice. Any advice from the panelists before we finish up, I suppose? We might take some questions. If you've got questions, guys, feel free to ask them on the chat now about anything we spoke about today. But your advice, panelists, about well-being, just, small tip or small bit of thing that you find works well for you.
Can I say, because we've, right from the beginning, we've really encouraged, and I know some of our franchisees are watching, but encourage them to work together as a team, and they've been amazing at helping each other out. So if somebody needs a break or is having a holiday, other people we're covering their sessions. So they've all worked together, and we've made sure that everyone's had a break. We've almost forced them to have a break, even though I've had a week off.
I think we've very much focused on keeping everything in perspective. Yes, they need regular breaks. There's no point just thinking that you're going to be able to do 6 months every day online sessions. It's just not possible. And if you think how you would have run previously, that most of our franchisees would have probably taken a fairly long break during the summer holidays, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason why teachers need a break from school. You need to switch off from it. So yeah, I think we've seen that there's been a lot of collaboration between our franchisees. They generally always work really well together and support each other brilliantly anyway. But we've set up various regional groups who've all had regional meetings on Zoom, and that's kind of developed into more of a sort of social activity actually than talking about the business, which is great. It's just an opportunity to let off steam and really share everything they're going through. And for some, it's been better than for others, but I think it's really helped that they know there's other people there going through the same concerns and the same processes. As for me, I've just discovered my bike again and managed to fall off it fairly frequently in the last few months, which is not good, but it's been fun. But yeah, I agree with you. You just need to take time to switch off, step away from social media, step away from all of it, stop looking at the guidelines and just refresh and then restart.
One thing that we said to everybody, all our franchisees and teachers, is it's okay not to be okay. And a lot of people, the start of lockdown, it was very difficult because you had some of the ones who were just all steam ahead, online, let's go, and the ones who just could not get their head around it. And of course, not only are you dealing from the pressures from your family, from your friends, you've got that lack of support network around you, kids at home. It was a lot to take on board for lots of people. We just kept saying to everybody, it's okay not to be okay. Take some time off to get your head around this, and we can pick up the slack, and that's fine. So just having a nice network around you, because all of us are we're all self-employed. You don't have that nice, a boss. We haven't necessarily been furloughed, and we're all just getting paid and sitting at home. It's been really tough financially, and it's just been really tough as well on your mental health and your well-being. Lots of sleepless nights. So taking some time out from social media is a very good thing to do. And I have said to people that, the weekend is your time. Switch your emails off, switch your social media off, screen time as well. I know we're saying online, let's do the online classes, but sometimes as well, the screen time and reading negative news articles just before you're about to go to bed is not something that you perhaps need to do. You need to get a good night's sleep, and you need to have a cut-off period. So we have advised a lot of people just to have a weekend to yourself, without having that constant interruption from clients, from social media, from the news. I think that's been quite helpful.
It's really important. I mean, I think, in business, I always say, well, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But this year, it's just felt like it's been one sprint after the other. Every time something changes, we're just going from one race to the other. And, and now in-person classes are sort of starting back again. I think there's a danger it feels quite relentless. And as others have said, I think it's so important to draw on the support of the wider community, connect with others who understand what you're going through, particularly if you're an independent class provider. And the other thing that we do as a team, and that we always put out on our social media, is have we have no social Saturday, and really try to encourage everyone to just have that one day where you do just completely switch off your phone, and you're not, you know, it's so tempting, especially when you're a business owner, to just have a quick look, see what's happening on social media or answer that quick email, but it's really important to give yourself that time and space. So, you know, that is something that we definitely advocate for.
But then don't necessarily do ourselves.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, right? For all of us, I'm sure.
We try, we keep trying.
All good advice, but I think if we can heed it ourselves, even better. Guys, I'm gonna leave it there. We could probably talk for hours, I'm sure. And but I just want to say thank you so much to all the guest panelists, Sarah, Mel, B, Caroline. Thank you so much for being part today. I know you guys were super keen to be part of it, which is great. But I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone, all the bits of on the chat function, all been saying thank you. I can't see any questions, so hopefully that means we've answered some of them. If I've missed the question, it can be quite easy for me to miss these on this chat function. Please email me, hello@institutecap.co.uk, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have got them. And the last thing for me to add before I let you other people go and enjoy your day is there are 2 more webinars later today. If you want to join those, one is focused on schools and the primary age of 5+ children mainly. There's another a different guest panel on that, which is going to be great. And also a last one with myself and Theo Millwood from Swim Time, who are going to be doing a 10-year prediction type of thing, which may go haywire, but it might be interesting. Feel free to join if you're available. And last thing as well is ICAP membership. It launches on the 1st of September. We are super, super close to releasing the new website. We've just been running some beta testing over the past few days. Got some great feedback and some stuff to change. So 1st of September, ICAP membership. I'll be selling it to you guys more soon. But right now, hopefully you guys have really enjoyed this webinar and the past few webinars that we've had going on. And thank you so much for being part of it too. You know, without you guys being part of it and joining, it doesn't happen, right? So we're talking about collaboration. That obviously is you guys joining in too. So thank you so much for that. And a recording of this will go out on Monday. So if you guys want to rewatch it, make some more notes, feel free to, or feel free to share as well. All right, thank you guys. Thanks, panelists. And I'll see you guys.
Thank you so much, Andy.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.